I love Crash Bandicoot, and if you're watching this video, there's a good chance you do too. I always thought Crash was a near perfect marriage of charming personality with precision platforming. And when I heard Toys for Bob was making a sequel to the original Crash trilogy, I was equal parts nervous and excited. But the more trailers I saw, the more gameplay showcases I saw, my excitement began to entirely overshadow my doubts. And of course, I had to pick up Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time on launch day. In just 5 minutes into Rude Awakening, I knew I was gonna have a blast. The game just felt right, played right, fit like a glove for me. And by the time I got deeper into the game, by the time I was utilizing different quantum masks, playing as multiple characters, grinding for new skins, doing inverted runs, digging into the flashback tape levels, I was convinced this was the best Crash Bandicoot game I had ever played. I was convinced it was adequately respectful of the games and history that came before it, while also pushing the platforming gameplay and overall user experience into wholly new territory with various innovations and quality of life improvements. And that's what I want to cover here. Basically, I just want to gush about this game, which has honestly become one of my all-time favorite platformers. I had so much fun during my initial playthrough back in the fall of 2020, and I've just been digging deeper and deeper into everything on offer here since the game received its next-gen update in March. So these thoughts have been top of mind, and I want to share them with you now. Although, one quick housekeeping item first. Talking about this game at the moment feels bittersweet on the heels of last month's news that Toys for Bob, whose parent company is Activision Blizzard, has been reassigned to support Call of Duty Warzone, the free-to-play online multiplayer game that a year after its launch already has 100 million active players. Let's be honest, this isn't what Crash fans want to hear. Toys for Bob truly showcased the talent of their artists and animators and programmers with Crash 4. The thought of them instead having to feed the Call of Duty machine, it somewhat reminds me of Ubisoft Milan being forced to support Ghost Recon Breakpoint. Toys for Bob has since told VGC that layoff claims within the studio are not true, that the team is still intact, and that they will continue to support Crash 4. Now, support is a relative term. What does that mean specifically? What about Crash 4 DLC, or Crash 5, or that heavily rumored Spyro sequel/reboot we've been hearing about? I really don't know. This all bums me out on one hand, but on the other hand, it makes me so thankful that the studio managed to squeak out this game before the hammer came down. It even makes Crash 4's March 2021 next-gen update feel like a small miracle. So I know this news is a bummer for any Crash fan, but that feels like all the more reason to pay tribute to Crash 4. So let's do it. Let's get into the good stuff.
What have I got?
One of the many reasons why I believe Crash 4 is the ultimate Crash Bandicoot game is that lives are optional. Toys for Bob so smartly offered players two choices, retro mode or modern mode. If you choose retro mode, things will play out as they always have. If you're a purist, you'll be satisfied. You'll have a limited number of lives while attempting to complete levels, and as long as you have at least one life left, you'll return to your last checkpoint upon death. However, if you choose modern mode, which is my preferred way to play, the life system is totally thrown out the window. You can try and retry levels endlessly, but there is a death counter next to your character's face at the top of the screen. And to incentivize you to play efficiently to keep that death counter low, there's actually a special gem awarded at the end of each level in the game if you are able to complete the level with 3 or fewer deaths. So this can necessitate some strategizing on the player's part. Sometimes on particularly challenging levels, you may need to choose between going for all the crates, even the toughest ones, or attempting a low deaths run, because it's a lot easier to keep that death counter at 3 or below if you're passing up the most difficult to reach crates. But as any Crash player knows, that's hard to do. These crates are so tempting, so those instances in which you're able to get 100% of a level's crates while dying 3 or fewer times all in one try, it's especially satisfying. Additionally, I believe the inclusion of modern mode allowed Toys for Bob to design more difficult platforming challenges than those in previous Crash games. The more I played Crash 4 in modern mode, the more I realized that some of the difficulty in the early Crash games, as with many platformers, was contingent on the life system, a system that originated with arcade games. Back in the day, if you wanted to keep playing, you either had to be really good at a game, or you had to keep feeding quarters into the cabinet, and the only way to get really good at a game is to play it a lot, which meant lots and lots of quarters. So either way, the owner of the cabinet was getting paid. And I'm not saying that life systems ruin games or anything, there's plenty of great games I love that revolve around lives. But I don't think it's coincidental that many of my favorite games like Rayman Legends and From Software's Soulsborne games also don't use lives. They have other, arguably more creative ways of rewarding and punishing players in relation to how much or how little they're dying. And I liked seeing this kind of innovation with Crash 4. To make the experience even better, throw in the solid-state drives inside of the PS5 or Xbox Series X and S consoles, and deaths become a somewhat trivial affair. You're able to load back to your last checkpoint in an instant and focus on the real challenge, the platforming. On that note, another huge quality of life improvement that was introduced in Crash 4 is the option to add a drop shadow with a yellow outline underneath your character. Anyone who's played the original Crash trilogy knows that no matter your skill level, some of your deaths are the result of an inability to gauge exactly where your character is going to land following a jump. Most of the time, it's not too much of a problem, but for a game that revolves around precise platforming, this is a godsend in my opinion. While we're talking about gameplay, I want to hit on another one of Crash 4's strengths, the quantum masks. The gameplay of Crash 4, by and large, will be familiar to fans of previous Crash games. The movement is smoother and snappier than ever before, the running and jumping alone are excellent. But Crash feels like Crash, and he retains some of his additional moves from Crash 2 and Crash 3, like sliding and belly flopping. But the masks are where things get interesting. Lonnie Lowly, the blue mask, gives Crash the ability to phase objects like crates and platforms in and out of existence. Simple button presses alter your reality back and forth, back and forth. This creates such interesting and creative platforming sections that can honestly make your brain hurt at first. But successfully navigating the trickiest of these sections brought me some of the most satisfaction I've ever experienced with a platforming game. Then there's Kapunawa, the yellow mask. This mask allows Crash to temporarily slow the flow of time, allowing him to quickly navigate platforms and obstacles in such a way that would otherwise be impossible. Again, on the part of Toys for Bob, this mask is very clever and does a lot to enhance player engagement and immersion. These sections can be so tense, so hands-on, it's great stuff. Then there's Ika Ika, the green mask, which controls gravity and allows Crash to run on ceilings. Again, it's a seemingly simple variable, but nailing some of these free-fall, upside-down landings can be really tricky, especially when surrounded by enemies. Lastly, there's Akano, the purple mask, who allows Crash to turn into a dark matter tornado and cover great distances and reach otherwise impossibly faraway platforms. This mask is interesting, deceptively so. In my initial playthrough, I struggled most with Akano. His spin effect sometimes felt so awkward and unwieldy and led to a lot of deaths. But then it clicked. Akano is the darkest mask. His personality is the most intimidating. I mean, just look at his face, he's grumpy. This mask is as much a hindrance as it is a power-up. Akano's spinning can kill you as easily as it can help you. This was like a psychological hurdle for me. Once I started thinking about Akano this way, I got a lot better at using him effectively. In this business with the masks, it all comes together toward the end of the game. Crash 4 has no shortage of technical and challenging platforming sections, but none is more clever than the last stretch of Cortex Castle. This roughly 40-second obstacle course serves as the game's final exam. The player must avoid a series of hazards by continually switching between the game's 4 quantum masks in midair. I recently posted a video of this section you can watch on the channel. The task seems nearly impossible at first, but practice and persistence win the day. This level is a stroke of genius, and for me, a reminder of why I love fast-paced platformers. Next up on why I feel Crash 4 is the best Crash Bandicoot game, the content. This game, if you want it, has a lot of content. There are 38 distinct platforming levels across 10 unique worlds. Each of those 38 levels also has an inverted mode version, which can change the orientation, visuals, and even physics of a given level. Plus, every inverted level has its own unique set of 6 clear gems, just like the standard versions of every level do. And that's not to mention that 9 of the standard 38 levels are timeline levels, meaning they are playable with a unique character other than Crash or Coco, so Dingodile, Tawna, or Neo Cortex. But more on them later. Then there's 5 boss fights, and those also have inverted versions. And then there's 21 flashback levels unlocked by collecting flashback tapes throughout the game's main levels. The flashback levels are really interesting. Clearly, the level designers at Toys for Bob asked themselves, what if we made entire levels consisting only of crates? Continuous domino-like platforming challenges, somewhat akin to bonus levels found in the main game, but even longer. And they did just that. So all said and done, there's over 100 levels to beat in this game. And I didn't even mention time trials. Every level other than boss battles and flashback levels offers a time trial, which can be pretty sadistic in nature if you're going for the platinum relics. The other playable characters I mentioned earlier, I think Toys for Bob did a great job with them. They added real variety to the game in this respect, because each of the 5 playable characters control and move differently. There's even subtle differences between Crash and Coco. But even though these characters are here if you want them, they're not force-fed to the player. You can run through the majority of Crash 4 playing only as Crash if you want, and at least when you do have to play as other characters, they control really well. You can tell Tawna and Dingodile and Cortex weren't hasty last-second add-ons to this game. They control so well that you could design an entire game around any one of them. I think Cortex's ability to turn enemies into platforms with his gun is particularly clever. So I think this is the best of both worlds. These characters don't overstay their welcome, but they're here if you really want the variety. And while we're talking about content and characters, I have to touch on skins. What a small but fun addition to a Crash Bandicoot game. The ability to change your character's cosmetic appearance. There's more than 24 unlockable skins for both Crash and Coco. And like I said about the other playable characters, you can tell these skins weren't tack-ons. These costumes are extremely well designed. Some of them are so charming, so laugh-out-loud funny. Not only is wearing them fun, but unlocking them is just another challenge, another thing to do in the game. In my case, unlocking new skins was one of my very favorite things to do in Crash 4. So yes, you can absolutely run from the beginning to the end in each level from point A to B and leave it at that. Forget the gems, forget the skins, the flashback tapes, and your playthrough will be easier and shorter as a result. But if you want lots to do, if you want lots of challenges, Crash 4 truly has you covered. Lastly, I want to quickly touch on the game's performance and presentation, especially after its March 2021 4K next-gen update, because we have never seen a Crash game that looks and runs this good. Of course, it's not quite as impressive or smooth on the older consoles, but on Series X or PS5, this game is pushing a native 4K resolution at 60 FPS. That's basically the highest ask for any console game at this point, and Toys for Bob delivered. This does so much to enhance the fast-paced platforming gameplay, as well as the beautifully animated cutscenes. The user interface too is crisp and attractive. This game as an overall package oozes tender love and care. So look, I could go on, but in a nutshell, that's my case for why Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, is the greatest Crash game ever made, and why I can't get enough of it. This game really gives me my platforming fix whenever I want it, and I suspect it's one that I'll be playing continually for years to come. Its platinum trophy is no joke either, one of the hardest platinums I know of. According to PlayStation, less than 1% of players have achieved it, 0.7% to be exact, so talk about having something to aim for. But that's all I have for you on Crash 4. If you'd like to see some more Crash content, I also somewhat recently uploaded a 4K update gameplay showcase back when that update first went live. But tell me what you think about Crash 4 down in the comments. Do you love it as much as I do? And what do you make of this new development with Toys for Bob, with their focus on Call of Duty? What does this mean for the future of Crash? Does this mean we could go years with no new Crash-related games? Did the sales of Crash 4 leave the company executives so unimpressed that they couldn't care less about this adored franchise, especially when compared to the video game ATM machine that is Call of Duty? Do you think there's any chance that Activision would allow another studio to focus on the Crash IP? I suppose I don't know how excited I am about that idea, if it even happened, because I feel that Toys for Bob just proved themselves to be such great stewards of the franchise. So let me know what you think about all of this below, and as always, thanks for watching.